Hey guys, Travis here, back with another training talk, and for today's video I want to do something maybe a little bit different, and I want to just kind of talk to you almost as directly as I would a coach to an athlete about how I set up a UT2 training session and how I would expect athletes that I coach to set up a UT2 training session. I am not going to kind of dive into kind of the theory and the basis and the reasons behind the decisions that I make. I'm just going to lay out what they are, and if you guys are interested in a lot of that kind of background info, kind of more of that long talk like I do for my normal videos, say so in the comments and I'll record a separate video going into the depths of the theory and the thought process of setting up a UT2 training session. But to the point, diving in. UT2 training, alright, depending on where you are, the volume is really going to depend on kind of where you are in your training, alright? So whatever it is, that volume, you need to figure out for yourself. I'm not going to go any farther into that. Pick what your UT2 training session is. When you're sitting on your erg, you need to set it to just row, alright? Let the timer count up. Do not set it to count down. With the only exception being if you're doing shorter intervals for whatever reason, I do recommend going continuous for your steady state and not splitting up to intervals. But if you're setting up intervals and you just really love having the monitor count down and you just can't possibly have the monitor count up in time, then set your intervals. The problem with intervals though is that if you need to stop for any reason, right? Certainly if you need to stop to get water, if you need to stop to eat a gel or you know, take a bite of a power bar, whatever it is, if you need to stop because somebody is interrupting you, then if you have that monitor count down, that is going to completely disrupt your training data and it's going to mess up your average if you stop rowing. If you let the monitor count up, then when you stop, the monitor is going to recognize that. It's going to reset to where you stopped, and then when you start back up, it is going to pick up where you left off. And when you do that, when you stop, you need to take your last hard steady state stroke, put that handle down. Don't like take an easy stroke or two and then set it down. Just immediately from full pressure to handle down, get your drink of water, and then when you pick that handle back up, you need to pick it up and you need to take 2 or 3 really hard strokes to get that split down to your base pace as quick as possible, and that is going to allow you to stop with minimal disruption to your average split for that training session, which is going to be important for recording in your training log, alright? And so that average split, you want to be recording that, you want it to be accurate, and that if you take any light strokes, it is going to mess up your average. So you don't want to be working in a good firm pressure at a 2-minute split for an hour, and you want and have your average split for that session say a 202 or 203 just because every time you stop to get water you just kind of took a couple light strokes at a 3-minute or a 3:30 or 2:30 split for a couple times before you got to that 2-minute split. Alright, that is horrible. Alright, you don't want that. So it is handle down, do what you need to do, pick up that handle, don't take any light strokes, don't ease into it, just crank on it for 2-3 strokes, get your split down immediately to where you left off, and then settle into your steady state rhythm again. Now, with those breaks, when you're stopping, you want to have your station set up so that when you're stopping for water, to eat, whatever it may be, that it is a pit stop, it is not a rest period, alright? So we're thinking NASCAR, we're thinking Formula One. You are getting done what you need to do to maintain your machine, and then you're getting out and you're getting back to the effort at hand. So your water should be right within reaching distance. The cap should be off your water so that you're not sitting there unscrewing it, drinking it, screwing it back on, putting it down. No, cap is off, you reach down, you pick it up, you get your drink, you set it down, you take your handle, you go. If you're taking in a gel, your gels, you've taken the top off your gel so that you can reach down, squeeze the gel into your mouth, put it down, get a drink of water, set it down, and go, alright? Because steady state benefits from consistent cardiovascular pressure on your circulatory system. If you rest for extended periods, that heart rate is going to plummet, and it's going to plummet at a faster rate the longer you take that break for, and so you don't want to take long breaks. So your pit stop is 10-15 seconds, get what you need to do, and get going. You don't want to be stopping for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute at a time, and allowing your heart rate to completely recover before getting back in. If you're doing that, you're essentially doing your steady state in intervals, which I don't recommend against, or I recommend against. Next, how you're approaching it. you want to think about having a warm-up period at the beginning of your steady state, and then your core, your base period within that steady state. All right, so that warm-up, there's no fixed length of how fast it can be. Your warm-up, if it's however long it takes you from settling into that first stroke as a very relaxed, very calm, very light pressure, to settling in naturally and comfortably to whatever your base rhythm is for that piece. All right, that could be 5 minutes, that could be 10 minutes, that could be 20, it could be 25, 30 minutes, depending on who you are. If you are younger and fitter, it's going to require less time. If you are older, less fit, then it's going to take more time. All right, so my youth athletes generally never needed more than 5 or 10 minutes to kind of get loose and get warm. My older masters athletes sometimes needed 20-25 minutes to get loose and get warm before going into the main base, the core of the training session. Now, if you are rowing continuously through, and I say think about that warm up as a mindset, not as a warm-up period, stop for a period of time, stretch, get water, whatever you need to do, set your monitor, and then go. That is a different kind of warm-up. So I think about warm-up during steady state as a mindset, as a physical warming up, all right? And so if I'm doing 60 minutes and I'm taking 15 minutes to warm up, then that is just whatever 15 minutes of that 60 minutes is. It's not I'm doing 15 minutes and then I'm stopping and then I'm walking around, taking water and going, all right? It's part of that 60-minute row. Now, for that warm-up, to give it a little structure for my youth athletes who really couldn't make the decision for themselves, I would say 3 minutes at a slow walk pace, 3 minutes at a fast walk pace, 3 minutes at a slow jog pace, and then at the end of that 9 minutes, start to gradually settle into whatever your base rhythm for that effort is going to be, all right? And I use walking, fast walking, and jogging because those are very familiar efforts for every person. You know, all right, well, what's the equivalent effort of a slow walk for me on the erg? What's the equivalent of a jog for me on the erg? Those are the efforts that you want to take into that warm-up period on that indoor rower or on the water if you're in the boat. And during that period, it's a great time to focus on the mechanics of the stroke and the technique and the application, all right? And so your physical output is low, so your mental output can get primed for making sure that you have the focus and you're technically honed to produce good strokes for the rest of that period. So really, I would just think about the separation of the body on the recovery, holding that body angle forward as I'm connecting with the load and accelerating the load through. All of those things is what I would think about and what I do think about at the beginning of kind of my warm up, all right? But the key thing is that you start very slow, very comfortable, and you allow your muscles and your body to naturally warm and loosen. And then once you feel like you've gotten to that point where you're warm and loose, settle into your base rhythm. And at that point, I would then reset the timer, the counting up timer on your monitor, all right? Because I want to record in your training log what your average split is for the base of that workout. I don't care. It does not matter how long it took for you to warm up, or how slow you were on your warm up, or how fast you were on your warm up. And the reason I will separate this, I'll reset the monitor and let it start counting up again, is because I don't want to be an athlete to be tempted to go too fast, to go faster than they should on their warm-up, just because that influences what their average split is going to be at the end of that warm-up, at the end of that workout. So I would reset the monitor to completely separate the data collected during that warm-up from the data that I actually care about, which is once you've warmed up and you've settled into your base rhythm. And even, you don't even want to limit yourself to saying, well, I always warm up for 10 minutes, or I always warm up for 15 minutes, all right? So for me, there'll be times where I've been sitting at my desk all day working on the computer, or I've been sitting on the couch watching a movie with my little girl, and my body's just not loose and not warm. And it might take me 15, 20 minutes to get loose that day on my warm-up before I can really settle in to my pace. And there might be other days where I've been outside, maybe working in the garden, maybe I've gone for a hike with the family earlier in that day, or maybe I've even done another training session earlier that day, where I can sit on and within 5-6 minutes, boom, I'm loose, I'm settled into my base, I'm ready to go. That doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't, what matters is once I've finished that warm-up period, whether it's been a short 5 or 6 minutes, whether it's been a longer 15, 20 minutes, that I have separated the warm-up from my primary effort and from the data that I'm going to be recording in my session. So that's it. Set up your station. Water easily accessible. Let the monitor count up when you're warm up as long as you need to, and then reset the monitor so that that average split you have in the end is an accurate average split of what you were pulling during that training session. And then as far as the effort during that training session, I would always tell my athletes is that every 5 minutes during your UT2 should be at or slightly faster than every 5 minutes that came before. And I'm not talking about starting at a 206 and finishing at a 156. I'm talking about if I settle in, and I know from my steady states I'm usually always averaging around a 2-minute split, then maybe I finish my warm-up and I've settled into like a 201, 202, and I'm seeing a lot of 201s, 202s. And I'm continuing that for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm getting looser, I'm getting warm, I'm really finding a good rhythm, and I'm seeing a lot of 2-minute, a lot of 201 splits. And then maybe by the end, the last 20 minutes of that 60-minute session, I'm just feeling great, I'm having a good day, my body is loose and my body is warm, I'm starting to see a lot of 159s and 2-minute splits, and maybe every once in a while I pop out a 158 if I take a really good stroke. That's what I'm talking about, is every 5 minutes should be slightly faster or the same speed as the last, all right? And so as you move through a steady state, a UT2 steady state, you should be loosening and warming up, and your effort should be the same, but your speed is probably sustaining or getting a little bit faster, because the longer you go, the warmer you are, the more you settle into your rhythm, all right? If you find that you are slowing down, then you are either rowing too fast or you're rowing too long, all right? And so those are good kind of measurement, good indications of misappropriate or misallocation of training volume, all right? So that you know it's a good aerobic session and it's within your current state of fitness if you're able to sit down at a consistent effort, and maintain or slightly improve upon your speed, all right? And the improvements in speed are coming not because you're pushing harder, you're working harder, it's because you're feeling better and you're feeling looser, and the effort is consistent through that training session, all right? If you are warming up, if you're not warming up very well, if you're just hopping on, and I see this a lot with youth athletes, especially youth male athletes, is you just hop on, they'll start pulling a 2-minute split on the warm-up, or maybe even a 155 split, because they're fresh and they feel good. And unlike their older counterparts, or you know, their body is already loose and supple because they have youth behind them, supporting them. And so they can hop on, they're feeling good, they're rowing, they got lots of energy, they're rowing a 155, 2-minute split on the warm-up, and then they settle into their steady state, and then they're rowing 2-minute splits for maybe 10-15 minutes, and then they're starting to get tired, and then they're pulling 203s, and by the end they're struggling and they're pulling 206, 207, 208 splits. Well, one, you always want to finish your aerobic training sessions feeling strong and aggressive and alive and vibrant. You don't want to feel like you're struggling, like you're hanging on, and you definitely don't want to finish slower than you started, all right? So that is not a good aerobic training session. So you need to pace yourself properly, all right? And it's certainly always better to start a little slow and give yourself a little buffer to maybe speed up and go a little bit faster if you're feeling good, than to go the opposite. And so for me, if I'm usually averaging, let's say I'm picking that 2-minute split, if I'm used to doing 2-minute split on my average, then I don't want to go straight to a 2-minute split after my warm-up, because there is a range of you're going to feel. If you're going to a split on your average, you're not going to be a 2-minute split every day. Some days you're just not going to feel as good as other days. Some days you're going to feel amazing. And you want to give a little bit of a buffer for those days that you're not feeling good. And so maybe that day I'm going into my session, and maybe my good session for that day is going to be a 202 split. And so by allowing myself to start out at a 202 split, 203 split, and I'm finding that I'm just not loosening up the way I normally do. And so I'm just staying at a 202 for that whole session, and I finish it at that 202. It's still a good solid effort. I've still been consistent with my pace from beginning to the end of that effort. But if I had gone in and gone right to that 2-minute split, then maybe that was too fast for that day, and then I'm going to be kind of struggling in the latter half. And so I always try to build in a little bit of a subtle negative splitting effect in my training sessions to give a little bit of buffer for if I'm just not feeling great that day, and it turns out that my average is higher than what my average normally is for that training session during that training period. And then conversely, if you're having a great training session, it's very easy to speed up and go faster. Then you're just going to get looser quicker, and then you're going to quickly get from that 202 to that 2 minute, and then you're going to quickly progress from that 2 minute to pulling 158s, 157s, and you're just going to spend maybe 40 minutes pulling at those slightly faster splits than another session where you might have only spent 10 or 15 minutes pulling at the split. So all the things we talked about: let the monitor count up, have your training session set up so that you can very quickly take a break. When you pick up that handle, make sure you're pulling and yanking to high pressure to get that split right back down to your average as quickly as possible and not mess up your average. Take as much time as you need for warm-up. Ease into your warm-up. All right, let your muscles loosen and let your muscles warm naturally at their own pace, however long that pace is. Reset your monitor after that warm-up period so that you can record your training data for post-warm-up execution and that your warm-up doesn't affect it. You're making sure that you're pacing yourself so that you are maintaining your speed or slightly improving your speed, and you're keeping the volume of the session to the point where you can maintain that speed or slightly improve that speed. You're not going so long that you can't sustain your speed any longer. And then for your stroke rates, and I've talked about this in other videos, and I'll kind of link them up there. Your stroke rates for rowing for UT2 steady state should fall within that 16 to 20 range for the most of us. Some people might benefit during some parts of the year. I would say very early in your base building phase, maybe in the 14 to 16 range. But generally 16 to 18, 19 is going to be typical. If you are very fit or you're really very close to the competitive phase, or you're in the competitive phase and you're doing your UT2, then maybe 20, 21, 22 is going to be appropriate. But for 99% of us during 95% of the training year, training your UT2 in that 16 to 19 range is going to be the most effective. And then that's it. And then you're taking at the end of that thing, you're looking at your average split. And then again, when you do finish that session, that last hard stroke you take, look at that average split, and that's the average split you're going to record in your training log. If you forget to look at it and you set it down, it's going to record that 3 or 4 seconds that you weren't rowing. It's going to bump up your average 0.1 or 0.2. Why give away that 0.1 or 0.2 seconds in your training log? No, if you've been pulling a 2 minute 0.6 for that training session for 40 minutes, then why record a 2 minute 0.7 or 2 minute 0.8? Because after you've set your handle down, that's what the monitor kind of records in the data, because it's recording those 3 or 4 seconds of inactivity in your average. All right, and then record that in your training log. And then the best thing to do is to convert that 2 minutes 0.6 to a numerical representation, and then give every day a numerical modifier, and then create a graph, all right, with the days as your x-axis, so day 1 to, let's say, day 200 in that training phase, and then your y-axis is your split. You just want to assign a numerical representation, and I liked over time for my split to go down, and so it would basically be a scatter plot. And so you figure out what numerical number to assign your steady state splits, and I like to split up into tenths of a second. And so let's say my range of splits is going to fall between a 158 and a 204. So I would set up my x-axis to cover maybe a 157 to a 205, and then every y would be 0.1. So 157.1 all the way up to a 204, and then below that a 203.9. And then every time I have an average for my steady state, I would figure out the day 0 through 200. I would create a data point for that, throw it on the scatter chart, and then you can track your progress of steady state over time. And your scatter, I say scatter plot because you're going to be boom, up and down all over your average, right? Steady state is not going to lower on a continuous smooth curve from one day to the next, right? You're going to be, some days you're going to be slower than normal, some days you're going to be faster than normal, but the average, the trend should be downward if you're training in an effective manner. So that's all that I would tell kind of my athletes for training UT2, how to track it, how to set it up. The effort for that UT2 is going to be a firm, sustainable effort, all right? And so it should be an effort that you can match all those criteria I said before about the stroke rate, the power per stroke. Make sure you are increasing speed throughout the efforts. It should be an effort where your breathing is strong but rhythmic, and so you should not be breathing uncontrolled. A heavy, rapid breathing is more characteristic of a UT1 steady state. A deeper rhythmic breathing, a controlled breathing pattern is going to be characteristic of UT2. And for me personally, in my breathing pattern, what I find is that I have kind of a two breath pattern in my UT2. So I will breathe out heavy as I compress to empty the lungs. I may take a quick breath and hold that. Quick breath at the catch, hold it through the drive, and then a quicker but more powerful exhale at the release, and then a quick in as I'm moving to body over, and then out as I compress. Quick in, hold, drive, out at the release, and so on. That's what I found works best for me. I like having my lungs empty as I compress, but other people kind of advocate for other training patterns. Find what works for yourself. But the key is on UT2, your breathing should be rhythmic, it should be strong because you're working hard. You should not be at a long, slow distance, all right? It is not conversational pace, all right? That is a different training zone. UT2 is a pace where you could speak, but sustained speech is gonna disrupt your breathing pattern. It's gonna start to feel uncomfortable really quick. So I'm saying, like, if you're sitting there and an athlete reaches for your water, you should be able to say, oh no, that's my water, your water is right there. And that should not disrupt your breathing pattern. But if someone comes up to you and tries to engage a conversation, or someone next to you is trying to engage a conversation, or trying to say, what do you think about what Fred said in chemistry class today, then that conversation would be unpleasant for you. So stringing multiple sentences in over again, one after another, that should be unpleasant if you're at a UT2 pace. All right, so quick, oh no, that's not your water, that's my water, your water's over there. That's quick enough, succinct enough that you should be able to say it at a UT2 pace. At UT1 pace, it's very brief. You should be able to get a couple words out at a time without disrupting your breathing, but even saying, oh no, that's my water, your water is over there, that is something you're gonna not want to say at UT1 pace. So UT2, it's firm, it's a firm, sustainable effort. You should finish that pace in what you should finish that workout in what I would call a pleasant state of fatigue, all right? And so you're breathing hard, it's gonna take you maybe 30 seconds to catch your breath. After 30 seconds, you should be able to walk around, absolutely no problem, and that's a good sign that you're in an aerobic UT2 pace. So, those are all the markers of what a UT2 training session is. I hope that kind of helped you guys figure out if you're training in the right zone, or figure out what you need to do to be in that right zone. If you want a more in-depth video about UT2 and all of the considerations about volume, about splitting up into intervals versus not splitting up into intervals, about how much you should be drinking, how frequently you should be drinking or eating, whether you should be eating liquids or solids, I can make an entirely new video talking about those subjects, but that would be a much longer video than what I wanted to do today for you guys. So that's it. If you like this video, please click that thumbs up. If you have questions, put them in the comments below. Certainly if you want to have that kind of longer, more in-depth video, give that feedback down in the comments below and about exactly what you want me to kind of dive into and cover. If you think that's going to help some of your friends or teammates, please share this with them, and subscribe if you want more videos like this in your feed for YouTube. And that's it. Thanks again, guys. This is Travis signing off.